Hello everybody and welcome to today's Tyde Talk of Dead by Daylight. Today we'll be covering the history and meta of Urban Evasion, from release to the more current meta of patch 2.5.4. Urban Evasion went from a completely useless perk to one of the more common stealth perks for today's meta, and let's find out why. This will be one of our first perks to not start off at the release of the game, as it didn't exist until the release of the chapter The Last Breath in patch 1.1.0. This chapter would introduce the Nurse and Nia into the roster of Dead by Daylight. The Nurse would be the most overpowered killer, and still go on to be the strongest killer after several nerfs down the line. If Nurse saw you back in the day, there was no escape. Her movement speed was enough to chase a survivor and actually down them, though she was slightly slower than other killers, but only slightly. She had 3 blinks at base, and it was just good luck trying to escape a nurse that could teleport through walls, windows, and pallets and also be able to chase you down. It was a little ridiculous at release. Because of this, survivors struggled against the new terrifying threat since Nurse ignored all the defenses survivors had. Nia, on the other hand, was meant to have a perk to help out, kinda combat what the Nurse had, which was Urban Evasion. It was a perk that increased the movement speed of the survivor while crouched. The idea would be that you could avoid a killer's sight or avoid them with mind games. There was a requirement that you had to be in healthy status for this perk to even take effect. The idea to counter the Nurse is that when she blinks to you and is fatigued, you take the opportunity to Urban Evasion out of sight and stay low, though that wasn't exactly the case here. It was without question that the perk was useless, as the additional 15% movement speed was not enough to make any difference. Not to mention, you'd most likely want to use it after being injured to attempt to juke the killer without leaving scratch marks, although the perk didn't work because it requires you to be healthy. It wouldn't be too long after that patch 1.3.0 would come out, introducing a good increase of speed, which finally made the perk possible to use. The buff was a big increase, and made a noticeable difference, allowing survivors to make plays, but it was still not a highly sought after perk even with the change. Urban Evasion was set as a gimmick perk, allowing survivors to attempt to avoid killers and stealth around them. This perk would not be common, but would still give the killer the slip if they were patrolling the area. Although the speed wasn't high enough to warrant its welcome into the meta just yet, it would be half a year later that patch 1.7.0 would release, changing Urban Evasion to being one of the more meta perks of the time. Patch 1.7.0 would be one of the many patches that would start to pull Dead by Daylight out of the dark times. Over a period of a few patches, the killers would be given a variety of base speed increases, such as breaking pallets and vaulting windows, while also preventing survivors from using windows endlessly. In order to give some survivors some new stealth tech, Urban Evasion was given a massive buff. Urban Evasion would go from 50% movement speed to 100% and remove the healthy requirement in order to use it. This would effectively let you crouch walk at the same speed as standing. This was a controversial change among the developers, as many of them felt this may be too much at the time, but ultimately it was decided that it would be needed, and they were right. Urban Evasion would now enter the meta as one of the best choices to avoid a killer, as you would sneak around small debris and walls without giving off your location. Killers would have to be far more thorough on their search for survivors. It would be difficult for killers, as they had to be aware it was possible for a survivor to sneak right by them. Killers would have to start using perks like Whispers to track the stealthy survivors. So where does Urban Evasion fit in today's meta? Well, to be honest, it finds itself in a bad spot. Urban Evasion is a popular perk amongst those who are trying to remain stealthy. It did work its way into being a safety blanket, however, that would otherwise cause survivors to slow themselves down and build bad habits. Since the speed on Urban Evasion is equal to walking, a lot of players would simply crouch around non-stop. You may even see players crouch around not doing anything, as they focus primarily on not getting caught. This would earn the perk the nickname Urban Immersion, as players became so immersed in their stealth they would fail to assist the team in working on generators, or make any timely saves. This isn't to say that the perk doesn't do justice either though. Urban Evasion, when used properly, can make the difference between a chase's life or death. Killer thinks you go one way, while you sneakishly crouch the other. Escaping a chase is far more rewarding than ending it in a hook, giving value to your stealth build. Going on to cement itself further as a stealth gimmick, it does combine itself well into a stealth build. If you were to run other perks to combo with it, such as Iron Will to keep you quiet while you crouch injured, or Calm Spirit to help keep the Doctor's terror radius from revealing where you are while you're crouched. Other than the stealth build though, Urban Evasion hasn't been a massive influence on the game as some of the other perks we've talked about. Being that the meta best rewards speedy generator repair, it is less common to want slow, stealthy builds unless you are focusing on playing it by yourself and surviving the killer, possibly looking to take the hatch more often than not. With that, we've really covered all there is to Urban Evasion. It's a perk that was absolutely useless at its start, but earned its way into a great stealth perk. It may not make waves like Decisive Strike or No One Escapes Death, but it does work as a perk that serves its purpose. Better than what most perks have done so far. Patch 1.7.0 would really be the end of the story here, as it wouldn't change any further. It doesn't seem to be that this perk is going to see any future changes. It is well balanced and requires the player to utilize its strength in order for it to work in the meta. What are your experiences with Urban Evasion? Do you use it in today's meta? Do you remember when it first released and did you try it then? Let me and others know of your experience with the perk. I'm finally back from being sick and will be working double time to get back on track. If we're ever going to do the Dark Times Tyde Talk, we kinda have to cover a few more things, so I'm working on it, we'll get there shortly. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to check out any previous Tyde Talks you may have missed, and I'll see you all next time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, good game.